This video is about document B of the Stamp Act DBQ. This is a speech by George Grenville. Remember, the target question that we're working on with the DBQ is, was the Stamp Act justified? Was it fair? On document A, you saw the colonist perspective. Document B, we get to hear from George Grenville. Remember, the British government was a monarchy, and so you had King George, who said, "I wish nothing but good. Therefore, everyone who does not agree with me is a traitor and a scoundrel." Sounds like he's on a bit of a power trip. So King George had a lot of power, but Parliament was the only one who had the power to tax. They had the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and the Prime Minister of the House of Commons was George Grenville. He's the one we're hearing from today. He talks about virtual representation. Remember, that is when the Parliament's members represented everybody in the whole empire, even though they'd never been to most of the empire. So that's kind of like someone from a place that knows nothing about your life making all the rules. And so the colonists didn't like that much. So what does George Grenville have to say about that today? And while we're at it, why did the British think that the colonies should help pay for the French and Indian War? Why did they need to help pay? Not to get Krispy Kreme donuts. So switching over to our notes, notice you have the vocabulary up at the top again, and we're going to take a look at that note on the document first. So document B, the source is George Grenville, the House of Commons debate, February 6, 1765, and George Grenville was the Prime Minister of Britain from 1763 to 1765. He was the head of Parliament when the Stamp Act was passed. A lot of people give him credit for the idea of the Stamp Act. So let's think about that. Do you expect, first of all, whose point of view does this document show? A speech by the head of Parliament. So is it going to show his point of view with Parliament, or is it going to show the point of view of the colonists? And then, do you expect George Grenville to agree with what the colonists said in document A, where the colonists said, this is not fair because we don't have any representatives in Parliament? What's your guess? Do you think they're going to agree? He's going to agree with them or not? So we're ready to go on with reading. Before we start reading, I want to point out this little symbol right here. This is the paragraph symbol. It looks like kind of like a P with a double line. It means paragraph. So this is paragraph 1. We're going to read paragraph 1 and find information to fill in that first set of notes. The objection of the colonies is from the general right of mankind not to be taxed but by their representatives. Okay, so objection is their problem, right? It's what they say is wrong. It's a reason for feeling disapproval. A right is the power people should have just because they're human, just because they're alive. You can't take rights away. And then we'll get to virtually represents here in a bit. So the first sentence is saying the reason the colonies are complaining is because of the general right of mankind not to be taxed, but by their representatives. That's what document A said. So going on, the Parliament of Great Britain virtually represents the whole kingdom. The merchants of London and the East India Company are not represented. Not a 20th part of the people are actually represented. All colonies are subject to the dominion of the mother country. Okay, there's a lot there. So let's see. Virtual representation. So let's see, what does that say? The men in Parliament are told to represent the colonists from far away, even though the colonists don't get to choose a representative. That's virtual representation. He's saying, look, they represent everybody, even if you don't vote for them. And then toward the end, it says that all colonies are subject to the dominion of the mother country. That means the colonies all owe loyalty to Britain. It says not a 20th part of the people are actually represented. A 20th, that'd be 1 in 20 of the people are all that have a vote. Ooh, that's a pretty low number compared to what we're used to right now. So looking at the notes then, colonies say they should not be blank, but by their own what? That goes back to that first sentence. Prime Minister Grenville says the Parliament virtually blank the blank kingdom, which includes the colonies. Parliament of Great Britain virtually represents the whole kingdom. There we go. So fill in those blanks. And then the last one, less than 1 in 20 British subjects are actually what? By voting for representatives. So now we are ready to go on to the second paragraph. And as we look at the second paragraph, we're looking at the notes. American colonies have made it so the British Navy now costs how much money? We're looking for money values. So here's the second paragraph. Also, the Navy used to cost about 700,000 or 800,000 pounds. Now it costs about 1,400,000 pounds. The money for these expenses must be raised somewhere. This great increase of the Navy is, in a great measure, for the service of North America. So increase here means the Navy's getting bigger. The Navy's getting a lot bigger because, what does this mean? Let's look at those notes. In a great measure for the service of North America means mostly to protect North America. So the Navy's gotten bigger just to protect North America, according to George Grenville. Find those amounts. How much did it used to cost? Is over here at the end. How much it costs now is right here. The British Navy now costs some big number instead of some kind of smaller number. And this one is a range. You can have two different answers there. Well, yeah, two different numbers is the correct answer there. We're ready to go to paragraph 3. Britain has spent a lot of money on the support and blank of North blank. So what has Britain spent money on? Paragraph 3. We have expended so much on the support and defense of North America. We have given them so great a degree of security and protection. The French are now removed, but they still have some enemies against whom, however, Great Britain is employing her troops. Okay, so employing her troops there. Let's look at our vocabulary. That means sending troops to protect or fight. So there are still some enemies in North America where Great Britain is sending the military. And those enemies he's referring to are Native Americans who want to keep their own land. Thank you very much. So, looking at the thing you need to put in the notes, what is it that Britain has spent money on? They spent a lot of money on, looks like that first sentence. So now we're ready for the last bit. If they are the colonies, if they are not subject to this burden of tax, they are not entitled to the privilege of Englishmen. So let's look at the note. What do we need to know? If the colonists don't pay the what? So if they are not subject to this burden of tax. So if they don't pay what? Then they don't get what? What's the word he uses here? One last thing before we're done, and that is you need to answer all the document questions on the document in your packet on page 69. Answering all 5 questions on page 69. And then you're ready to move on to 2-7.